So for example, if the target had been set to say a few spaces here, what trim would do is it would get rid of these spaces and therefore render it as nothing. So we can go ahead and use that as well, and that will have the same effect. It's just something to note in, you know, that's quite useful if people are trying to mess your plugin around, find things that are wrong with it. Now the third condition, so or again, is we need to check if this target is currently in this target array. And obviously if the target is in the array, we don't want to apply target blank, so we can check that against false. So we say jQuery .in array. Remember case sensitivity, we've got a capital A here and a capital J here, as well as all these lowercase letters. So target array is going to take two parameters. The first one is the actual thing you're looking for, which is obviously the target that we retrieved earlier from the attribute set. And then we want to take a look at checking this against target array. So we just use target array. So now we can't leave this as it is, because if it is in the array, which say for example we had set this to self, this would be returned true. So we don't want to apply target blank if we already have blank self, parent or top. So we check this against false. Okay, so if the target isn't in this target array, we want to not obviously check this against false. So if it isn't, then we want to apply target blank. So they're the three things that we need to check, and we've used the OR operator to separate all of these. We've checked undefined, nothing, and we've trimmed it so however many spaces, for example, will be entered, it will always equal nothing. And then we've got jQuery in array, and we're checking that against false. Just a quick note, the trim will also work if the user was to say do self and then 3 spaces afterwards. So that's quite important. Let's just go and get rid of this from now on. Okay, so in plugin what we want to do is go ahead and apply target blank. So this is relatively easy. We just reference this again as in this. Now this in this case refers to this here. Okay, so we're using the functionality inside target blank to apply it to something that we've, you know, sort of bound it to. And we want to create the attribute. So the attribute is target and the value is blank. So if the target's undefined, doesn't equal anything, or it's not in the array, then we apply target blank. So that's quite simple, and we've now completed our plugin. So now obviously we want to go ahead and test it just in case we've done anything that we shouldn't, or it's not working properly. So let's just go ahead and refresh. Now at the moment the target is undefined, and therefore this condition should return true, and then we should apply target equals blank. So let's go ahead and refresh and click the link. You can see that we've applied a target of blank, and this is opened in a new window. So now let's go ahead and say target equals nothing. So it's defined, we've actually defined the attribute itself, but we haven't placed any content in. So when we refresh and click, it still opens in a new window. So we've applied target equals blank to this, despite the fact we've defined it already. Let's go ahead and enter 3 spaces in here and see what result we get back. This isn't part of the if statement because obviously we're checking for just one or it being blank. In this case we would have to go ahead and check target equals, you know, an amount of spaces. But because we've used trim, it will always be rendered back to this if there's no other content. So let's refresh and click Google, and you see it opens in a new window, so that's absolutely fine. Let's just go ahead and check what would happen if we didn't have this trim in here. And let's refresh, click Google. Oh, it has worked. Okay, so maybe it will automatically trim white space, but it doesn't hurt to use trim anyway. Okay, so now what we want to go ahead and do is set the target to something that it should, something that will override this this line here, this execution of this line here. So by using target self, this is contained within this target array, therefore this statement here will render it as false, or return the condition as false if it equals any of these, which it does. So when we refresh, it opens in the same window. You can see there's no new tab being opened. So we've sort of overridden this by using self. The same with something like parent. If you were to use parent, it more or less does the same thing, but there are the slight differences. but you know, we have the functionality in place. And obviously if we were to go ahead and use blank, we can't really see it in action, but it still opens as a blank window. But the only difference is that this line didn't run because it already had the target set to blank. So essentially what we've done is created our own plugin, something very basic but could be useful, so I didn't want to include something that was too useless. And essentially now we can just in ext.js apply this to any element we want. For example, if the link was just called link blank, for example, and this here had an ID, let's just get rid of that, and this here had an ID of, a class of link blank, that would still work because we've just applied the plugin to that particular element. If we were to go ahead and copy this and just paste it down, but get rid of the class, and let's say change this here to phpacademy.org. When we go ahead and click on this new link that we've created, it will open in the same window because we've only applied the plugin to that particular link there. So we can now use our plugin, and we can tell people that want to download our plugin that we use our plugin like this, target blank. Now there's one thing you'll notice that we haven't included here, and that is supplying parameters within here. So in the next tutorial we're going to look at creating a plugin but being able to supply particular parameters to it. So that's essentially how we go ahead and we create our own plugin in jQuery, and we've included some functionality in here that could or could not be useful, but the main thing is that we've created our plugin.